Okay, so to begin, we're going to be starting with going over the specs of our equipment. We're going to start off by going over the bags. So these are Holmatro's new HLB 12 bar lifting bags. You'll see the numbers on our orange siding here on each bag that correlate directly with the lifting capacity of the bag. So with our new equipment here, we have 4 different bags. We have our largest bag at a HLB 53. We have our medium bag at a HLB 31. We have our HLB 16. And new to our complement is going to be our HLB 2 lifting bag. Like I said, the number on these bags directly correlates to how much weight they can carry in terms of tons. Other specs that you'll see along here, we have our weight ratings, our safety, the name of the bag. We also have a scannable QR code on the side here as well that you can scan to see all the statistics of the bag and everything you need to know. We do have the model number on the side handle of the bag too, so when you are pulling these bags out of the slotted compartments on the truck, you can easily tell the bag identifier as well as the size. Some other new things on these bags that we have to talk about is these orange sidings. These orange sidings are also indicators of how high that bag can inflate. So with this bag, if it's on its side, the bag can inflate for a total height of this orange stripe. So that kind of helps you to determine which bag you're going to be grabbing for this operation. Some other new tools and specs on these bags is we now have these new carrying handles. These carrying handles definitely increase the ability of use with these in terms of being able to actually place them and drag them underneath vehicles and whatever we're going to need to be lifting without actually having to grab the bag itself or even grabbing our air coupling here as well, which was a huge deal with our last bags. So all of our bags, other than our HLB2, are going to come with these carrying handles. Our large bag has 2 of them to help us place underneath whatever we're going to be lifting. Along with that, what's new on these bags is we have slider pads on all of them. We have these 2 slider pads on all of them that will allow you to slide it underneath whatever you're going to be lifting. That way we're not causing excessive damage to our bags, which was an issue that we were having before. One thing about these pads is they recommend replacement of these pads when it's been worn down by more than 50%. Another new thing with these bags is our air coupling. Our air coupling on the old bags used to come off of the side at a kind of a corner angle here, in which case it was getting hit on a lot of things, caught on a lot of things, and we were tending to grab them, and a lot of unnecessary damage was happening to those couplings. So they have now placed those coming off a straight angle here and with our caps on. We want to make sure that we are always replacing these caps on to our couplings as soon as we're done using them. That'll help maintain good connections and will help mitigate any air leakage coming out of these couplings. These couplings are also different sizes from our last bags. They have been able to decrease the diameter of these couplings and still be able to maintain the same amount of pressure in these bags, which we said is 12 bar. Other important features with these bags is they have extreme grip. So when stacking these bags on top of each other, they do not want to slide at all, which is a huge safety feature. As well as this centerpiece here. You'll see on this centerpiece here that if we flip the bag around, this now fits inside of that. It's kind of designed to be a self-locking, inflating feature for safety when we're stacking bags to get that double the height. So if this was our bottom bag, we always want to start with our bottom bag closest to the ground. We would put this cross with the plus in this circle, facing like that, directly in the center, and that'll help lock those 2 together, mitigating any side slide when inflating those bags. Another feature is our reflective circles on the corners of all of our bags. This is another feature that's going to help us to center our bags perfectly on top of each other from the side angle that we will be seeing them and loading them in. So pretty much those circles help us to see from all 4 sides directly how this bag could be centered on top of the other one, which is a huge advantage for us, especially in the nighttime using lights. They are reflective. They're going to stack very nicely. They're going to marry up well with these crosses. And these circles, like I said, are going to be a huge asset to help us center those bags. So other than those features, not too much of a difference with our 3 bags that are replacing our last ones. We were able to go up 2 sizes on each one of these bags. So you are going to see that they are significantly larger than our pre-existing bags. They are a little bit heavier because they do have those slider pads and the handles on there. And with that weight, we have also gained a 50% weight capacity and 50% strength with our bag durability. And you're going to be able to feel that when touching them and using them. Now let's talk about the new bag to our complement, being the HLB2. This bag was purchased with the intent of being another tool in the toolbox for any type of hand crushes or foot crushes in our industrial areas, whereas before we didn't have much of a tool to help lift something off of someone's hand in a machinery area, such as a piston or a device that crushes down onto a hand. Before that, we would have probably used the spreaders or tried to get the corner of another one of our other bags into there. Now we have our HLB2 lifting series that can be used to slide under where the hand has been compressed, and we can hopefully inflate that straight up as to where the spreaders used to raise it at an angle, which is not what we want when doing that. So this bag is going to be kept in our box here and can be utilized whenever you need it. Okay, so we went over the specs of our HLB 12 bar lifting bags and what's different compared to our pre-existing lifting bags. Next, we're going to move on to what is inside our Holmatro box. So everything that you see on this table in front of you, other than the SC base cylinder, is going to be what is stored inside of our Holmatro box here. We're going to have our 3 hoses that are all the same length and color as our last ones. We're going to have blue and yellow measuring in at 16 feet and our red hose measuring in at 32 feet. We're also going to have 2 pigtails that work identically the same as our last pigtails did. We also have our new and improved Holmatro control unit, which we're going to go over, as well as a new regulator that goes along with this system. Additionally, in our box, we're going to have our HLB2 lifting bag for the hand crushes, and we're also going to have all of our paperwork, manuals, everything you need to know about these inside the box. Okay, so we're going to start off with going over our control unit. So our control unit works almost identically to our last control unit that we had. However, it does have more of a updated style, feel, weight, and durability to it. It is almost shaped as an Xbox controller, and they even say that they did that in terms of usability, grip, maneuverability on this. So you can kind of think of it as it like that. One new feature we have on here is if you press this button down at the lower right-hand corner, our gauges are now backlit for night operations, which is huge. Make sure that you turn that button off when you're done using. The battery is a built-in battery and is guaranteed for 10 hours of lifetime with that. So always make sure that you press that, turn it off when you're done with the operation. We also have this bar here in front. This bar is to be used as a carrying handle, and it's also to be used as a safety mechanism to protect our screens in the front display of our control unit. So that's what this is for. If you ever see that they are loose in any way, they are just an Allen wrench to tighten those up. Next, very similarly to the way our old system operated, we have plus and minuses on both sides here that directly correlate with the gauge closest to them. Plus means inflating or adding air or adding pressure to that line that is correlated with that on both sides. Also, our center gauge is going to directly align with this. This is going to be our air inlet coming from our SCBA cylinder or from the regulator directly to here. These gauges are going to directly correlate with the air gauges directly below them. So, very simple, they line up like this, and with our controls, they actuate on each side like that. We do have rubber grips for ease of carrying on both sides, and It's very simple, easy to use, and very similar to our last ones. One thing that is interesting and different about these is that these gauges here that are going to be connected to your hoses going to the lifting bags for the lifting operation, they have one-way valves. So you'll see when you press the plus button and you're adding pressure to those bags, you're going to see that needle bounce up, and then as soon as you let go of it, it's going to return back to zero. That's because it only allows the air to go out as you're pressing it and doesn't allow it to come back. So you're not going to get a consistent reading as that bag is inflated. That is completely normal, and that's what it's meant to do, to prevent that backflow of pressure from the bag to the controller. And that's going to happen on both of these. This center gauge, like we talked about, is going to be the gauge coming from our regulator and the SCBA cylinders. So that's going to show you a consistent pressure that is coming from your regulator. We're going to talk about the regulator and the setup of that later, but it's good to know that if you're ever having trouble lifting your bags, or you just feel like the air is inflating very slowly, you might have to dial in that regulator to get the appropriate pressure here on your bottom center inlet gauge. And like we said, these bags are HLB 12 bar. What 12 bar correlates to is 174 PSI. So that's going to be the max safety rating for this operation. You do not want to exceed 174 PSI. If you do, there is a relief valve built into our regulator that we're going to go over. So it's not a huge deal, but just for the terms of operation, you don't want to go over that. There isn't a specific number that is set into any of the manuals that talks about what pressure we should activate this regulator at. Our pre-existing ones were right around 116 to 120. And I've tested them, and I'm thinking that we're going to use this and set this to right around 120. And if there's anything different from there from what we found, then we'll adjust it from there. But as long as you're from that 120 to 174 range on that regulator, this operation is going to work very smoothly and safely. Okay, next thing we're going to be going over is our regulator. So very similar setup and similar usage to our pre-existing regulator with our lifting bags. So this end attaches to your SCBA cylinder. The SCBA cylinder is going to be our air source for this operation. So that directly plugs in through this connector here. You're going to have two gauges. You're going to have your inlet gauge, which is your actual air pressure that you are getting from the SCBA cylinder. The bottom gauge is going to be what you are controlling that to be with our regulator. So we are going to be using this here, and you'll see it says increase and decrease. Increase is clockwise, decrease is counterclockwise. This is very important to know that when you are done with this operation at the end of it, you want to reset this all the way till you see a free spin with this. That way, when you hook this up to a bottle, you have to reset that pressure adjustment every time. So that is a difference from our pre-existing regulator, because on our old regulators, we pretty much had it dialed into that certain PSI and left it there. But this one needs to be reset and then just quickly set to the PSI that you want. So right around 120 PSI to 174. And so you just use that, you turn it until you get increased, you'll feel the resistance start coming in, and you'll just keep going until you get that bottom gauge to the PSI that you want, and then it's going to correlate with that center gauge on there as well. You'll feel that this is very heavy duty and very user-friendly compared to our last one. The only other things you need to know is this is the hose connector here for our air inlet, and then this is going to be our relief valve. Like I said, that relief valve is going to actuate right around 180 to 185 PSI. That's why we have our max PSI of 174. So that's a safety feature built into this. You'll see your labels on here like we were saying. We have the high pressure on the top, and we have our low pressure on the bottom. And that is our new regulator. Next, we're going to be going over our new hoses. So like I already said, our hoses are very similar to our pre-existing hoses. And we did that intentionally to make our training and the memory a lot easier for these. So like I said, we have our two hoses, the yellow and the blue, that are measuring in at 16 feet, our red hose measuring in at 32 feet, and we have our two pigtails. So with our pigtails, same exact thing as the old ones. We have our two air connectors here, our inlet and outlet. We have our control valve, is this red control here. And so when it's in line like that, that means the air is flowing. And when it's turned sideways, that means that the air is not flowing. So we want to keep that in line until we need to be disconnecting our bags to change over hoses for any reason, in which that time we would turn it perpendicular. This here is another built-in relief valve to our hoses. That way, if the pressure ends up getting more than what the bag or the hose can handle, this relief valve will help alleviate that safely. So when operating these bags, we always want to attach our pigtails for use of ease, the ability to switch hoses from bag to bag, and that built-in safety feature of a relief valve. One other new thing that's different with these hoses is our connectors. Our connectors on our old bags were just like any other air connection, any other universal air connection around. Pretty much where you would pull the metal piece away from each other, push it, and it would blast. The thing when using those old air connectors on airbags, if you guys remember, is that if those were pressurized and you went to disconnect those, it would explode the hose away, in which that is not safe. That could come out, hurt us. It could interfere with the operation. It can cause damage to the own equipment. So Holmatro has installed these new safety two-stage coupler releasers. So what I mean by that is, I'll bring it a little bit closer so you can see. You'll see the two ends of the hose are connected to each other right now. We have one arrow pointing to our left with the number 1 on it, and one arrow pointing to the right with a 2 on it. What that means is, to disconnect this, you take this orange piece and you're going to turn it to the left, and you're going to see this pop off in one stage, but it's still connected. That is designed to disconnect under pressure without this thing exploding out of there. So by just turning it that quarter turn to the left in the direction of the 1, this just popped out about a 1/4 inch, but it's still secure in there. Now to fully remove and disconnect our hoses, we turn the opposite direction to the 2. So we turn to the 2, and now they disconnect. This is a built-in safety feature, and it is awesome. However, one issue that we did notice when trialing these is that the connectors that actually go into the control unit tend to be very difficult to disconnect when they're not under pressure. So you'll see that all of your connections here in an operation, they're going to have pressure underneath them, and they disconnect very easily. But if for whatever reason you're connecting these when it's not under pressure just to test or practice these, it can be difficult to disconnect them. So you're going to have to apply a slight amount of pressure back on that hose as you turn your couplers in the 2 directions, and that'll help simulate that it is under pressure and it'll pop. After speaking with Holmatro, a couple ways to maintain these air connections to mitigate kind of that stickiness of them is you can use a silicone lubricant to use that. And you'll put that on the male end of the connection, plug it into the female end, undo it a couple times, and that's going to help that lubricant get between those male and female connectors. Other maintenance for this equipment, is, like we said, keeping the caps on our male ends of the airbags, making sure that we are cleaning with mild soap and water our bags and hoses after each operation, as well as turning the light off of this and inspecting for any damage to any of the bags. If we have this on a dirty oil area, we have it in glass shards, making sure we're getting all the glass shards off there and wiping all that oil off there. Just overall keeping it clean and utilizing the handles and not picking up and moving these bags by the air connections, because we want to try and get those air connections to last as long as we can and keep those rubber covers on there as long as we can. If for any reason you ever have any maintenance issues, please inform myself via email, text, or phone call, and I can have them repaired or replaced if need be. Okay, so now talking about the usage and the setup for this operation. It's very similar to our last equipment that we've been using. So like we talked about, you grab your SCBA cylinder and you grab your regulator. You hook your regulator up to the SCBA cylinder, and before you turn the SCBA cylinder on, you want to connect your hose from the regulator to the center inlet of our control unit. After that hose has been clipped into our control unit, we can then turn our SCBA cylinder completely on, and now we're going to look at our regulator. So like we were saying, our top is our high pressure inlet, our low is going to be our low pressure or regulator gauge. So this gauge should match up perfectly to the PSI that our SCBA cylinder is being used at. This bottom one is what we're going to use our regulator to control. So like we said, anywhere from 120 to 174 for this operation. So I pretty much follow the directions on the side of this regulator, increase our pressure up to 130 is what I'll use for this operation, and then you're good to go here. You'll take this and put it off to the side. I think that for this operation, I think yellow should be consistently our main hose that comes into here because it's the same color as our regulator. So it's going to be easy to associate that with our inlet. And it's the shortest hose. You can always change that if you need to be further away from the bottle, and you can use the red hose, which is longer at 32 feet. But I say for the standard operation, the yellow hose is going to be good for our inlet. Okay. After that, we're going to simulate we're using a 2-bag lifting operation for this. So we have secured our red, longer 32-foot hose to our large HLB 53 bag, and we have secured our 16-foot blue hose to our medium-size HLB 31 bag. Okay, so we talked about the setup of our regulator, SCBA bottle, all the way to our control unit. We've now set up both of our bags that we've chosen to use from this operation to our control unit, and now we're going to talk about the actual lifting operation. So for this operation, we're going to simulate that we have a person trapped underneath a vehicle. The vehicle fell off jacks when the person was changing his oil, and that vehicle is down stuck on top of him. So for this, we'll simulate that we need to use 2 bags. Our HLB 53 bag, as you see here, like we talked about earlier, this orange stripe here correlates with how much that bag can lift distance-wise. So it's right around 16 inches for that bag. If for whatever reason we needed to lift more than 16 inches, what we can do is stack our bags. We cannot stack more than 2 bags, so if you need to get as much height as possible, I would suggest using our 2 largest lifting bags. You always want to start with lifting our largest bag first, the one that's going to be on the bottom, and then placing that second bag on there, and then lifting from there. Remember that these bags are rated, our 53 is rated at 53 tons, but that rating is associated when the bag is almost completely flat. The more that these bags are ballooned or pillow inflated, your weight rating of these, strength of these bags is going to be cut down drastically. So you want to lift these bags to a good middle point without actually creating a balloon effect with the 2 of them. So like we said, when stacking these, we want to interlock our cross here with our circle here. So we will have slid this using the handles and the sliding plates underneath the vehicle. We want to try and find a centralized, stable part of the vehicle, such as the frame to lift off of. We don't want to be using any type of suspension, anything that can move, any plastic parts that can give. We want to find a stable part of that vehicle. So we slide that in there. Let's say we want to go off the central part of the frame of the vehicle. Then we will place our second bag on here. We're going to use those circles on our outer edges, the reflective circles. We're going to centralize those, and that's what's going to help us get these center pieces to interlock together. You'll also see, like we talked about, these are stuck together. I cannot push this off of it if I tried. So that is a new safety feature with these as well, which is awesome. Okay, so like I said, we're going to inflate our largest bottom bag first, and then secondarily inflate our top bag until we start to get that lift. With our lift, we always want to make sure that we lift an inch and crib an inch. Cribbing is a huge safety factor that is going to help us with this operation because these bags are strong and they are secure, but we need to have a secondary means of safety by use of cribbing. So just a quick refresher on cribbing. is for the base of our cribbing set, if we are on concrete or asphalt, we can have an open base. If it's anything other than concrete or asphalt, we want to do a fully solidified base. And by that, I mean putting all of these together like that. So we're going to use this if we are on anything other than concrete or asphalt. But for this, we're going to say that our patient was changing his tire on concrete, so we can do an open base. So an open base, I'm still going to use 3, but I'm going to have a little bit of separation between each one of those. Now we're going to go perpendicular to that, and we want to have about 4 inches of overhang on both sides to securely build a crib. Our second layer that's perpendicular can be open like this. Our last and final layer, we'll say, the one that's going to be making contact to our vehicle. Ideally, if we are lifting with the bags in the front center of the vehicle, we want to have 2 cribs on each side of it. So we're lifting 1 inch in the center, and we are cribbing on both sides of the vehicle as well. Sometimes we might not have that luxury, and 1 crib is going to be all we can fit underneath there, but ideally you want to have a crib on each side of what you're lifting. Also, you want to make sure that we grab the chocks off the rig and chalk some of the tires on that vehicle that are going to be the least likely to leave the ground to prevent that vehicle from having some sort of lateral movement when lifting and cribbing this vehicle. So the chocks are going to be a huge asset for this. Okay, so we have our base layer. We have our 4 inches of overhang on all sides. Now our final top layer is going to look like this. So it's going to be solid across the top. For our final layer, it always needs to be solid because that's the most likely part of having contact on that vehicle. So a solid top, we have our 4 inches of overhang. The overhang is in case that wood cracks or fails in any way, it still has enough overhang to where it will compress, and this wood is actually meant to hold its shape and strength even under compression and failure. So that's how our crib 1 inch, lift 1 inch looks. Next, we're going to go over the actual operation of lifting these 2 bags. Okay, so next we're going to be talking about the actual lifting operation of the bags. Like we said, we're going to have someone that's in charge of the cribbing. We're going to have one person overlooking the whole safety and actual lean and tilt of the vehicle. We're going to have one person designated to manning our control unit, and another person that is looking and handling the bags directly, maintaining that they are being inflated at the appropriate ratio and that they are maintaining that good point of contact onto the vehicle. We want that purchase point, like we said, to be a stable part of the frame. When these inflate more and start ballooning, you can start to create a bit of a slip, and that's why we're lifting 1 inch and cribbing 1 inch, and that's why we have a person dedicated to looking at these bags that's going to help see and maintain if these bags need to be moved to maintain that point of contact on the frame. So we have our bags stacked with the biggest one on the bottom and a smaller one on the top. We have our reflective circles centralized and our center pieces interlocked. We have our hoses all set up, and we have our pigtails on here. Like we said, these pigtails are not only for means of ease when having to switch bags or move bags, but they're also a built-in safety feature because that's where the safety relief valves are too. So in case anything ever gets too overpressurized, we want to have that relief valve here. That way a hose or a bag doesn't blast and hurt somebody. So one person's on the bags, one person's on the control unit. For the means of this demonstration, I'm going to be doing both of them. So the person that's going to be manning this also has a good general idea that, our big bag is going to be our red line, so on the left here, and our blue bag is going to be our smaller bag. So like we said, we would say, this person would tell the person to the control unit, let's go up on red. And so you want to slowly inflate your bottom bag until you get close to contact without actually making contact. Because we want to inflate each of these equally as much as possible so they can maintain their strength and lifting capacity. You'll also notice on these that they tend to lift and have a little bit more air movement than the other ones after stopping pressing the button. And you can kind of hear it, and you stop and you hear the air keeps moving. That's because of that one-way safety valve and because of our smaller diameter hoses now compared to our last ones. That's also a built-in safety feature to allow that air to go in slowly and rise slowly without the rapid start and stop of air movement. Okay, so that person will have set up on red. We now have our red bag to a good point of contact, almost to our frame. Now this person would tell the control unit person, let's go up on blue. Copy that, up on blue. So now I'm going to be holding the plus button, allowing air to go into our top bag. Now we will have made contact, and we would continue to lift based on that until we get our lift. Remember that we're lifting an inch, cribbing an inch. As soon as the bag person starts to see that maybe this top one is starting to get more balloon than the bottom one, then let's say, okay, let's go back up on red. We want to maintain an equal amount of ballooning to both of these to maintain their structural stability. At that point, that's just what you just keep reevaluating until you get that lift that you need, and crib as you go to maintain safety of the whole operation to get that patient out of there. And same way for taking this all down, you'll just hold your minus buttons. That'll start letting your air out. It's a built-in safety feature that it lets the air out very slowly. If you ever need to release the air any quicker than that, we can disconnect our hoses to our pigtails and then bleed air out of our pigtails. We'll use our carrying handles to slide our bags out of here and go through our safety checks, make sure that none of our equipment was damaged, clean it with mild soap and water, and get it put back appropriately on the rig, and get it ready for the next use. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions about our new airbags, go ahead and send me an email, text, or call. Hope you enjoy the equipment. Okay, lastly is going to be the safety of these bags. So earlier on, we went over the usage of these, in which we talked about the lift an inch, crib an inch, went over some other ways to use this operation in a safe, effective manner. But in terms of safety, we want to make sure that we have our full proper PPE on for this operation. And you know, if you're training or on an actual incident, that can look a little bit different, varying from full turnout gear if there's a risk of fire or flammability, if there's gas leaking, you know, it can vary, all the way down to just your bunker pants, a lightweight jacket. But what is necessary is eye protection, gloves, and a helmet. You never know what can come popping out and exploding and dropping onto you. So you want to make sure that you have your gloves, your eye protection, and your helmet on at a bare minimum.